So I'm going to go through some GOMASSIVE techniques. So now this is an acronym for a few techniques you can use to make your descriptive writing a little bit more interesting. What I'll do is I'll go through each one of these techniques. There are more techniques, but this is a good place to start. And then we'll do a spot the techniques activity with answers at the end so that you can kind of see how we would spot these in a text. First technique we're going to have a look at is group of three, which stands for the G. So this is when we use three adjectives together to create a stronger descriptive effect. So when you're doing language analysis and you're finding this in a piece of writing, you don't just say, this is group of three. What you do is you identify the actual effect the writer's trying to have. So in this one, he was an evil, mean, and wicked man. The intended effect is to kind of emphasize how bad this person is. Okay, and all three of those words that have been used together, those three adjectives, they've all been used to kind of build that feeling and to create that emphasis. So if you were doing language analysis, you could then zoom in on all three of the words used within this. It's a strange rule, but it's something that we like as human beings. We like to hear when things come in three, it just sounds a little bit more powerful to us. So, for example, she was a wonderful, caring, and loving person. It just sounds a little bit more sincere than if you just said, oh, she was wonderful. Our next one is O, and this one stands for onomatopoeia. So this is when words sound like the noises they describe. So you've got things like drip, splash, and crack. Next, we have a metaphor. So metaphor is when we say that something is something it isn't to create a comparison. So we'll say something like, she is a lion. A fantastic way of looking at this is that metaphors and similes is a great way of showing how we understand the world by making these comparisons. But just in the form of a metaphor is when we say that something is something else to create that really strong comparison. That's what a metaphor is. Next we have adjectives. These are great for painting a picture for your audience to work in some description, as you can see in the first example. The phone is sleek and modern. So just add in those words to give the audience an idea of what you're talking about. Number two, the effect of social media on young people has been devastating. So once again, I've tried to use that adjective there to add a little bit more detail, and I've deliberately chosen that word there, devastating, to conjure up this painful image. Number three, the world is a beautiful place, the clear, crisp waters. So you don't want to go over the top with your adjectives, but you do need to include them in order to kind of help kind of support the imagery that you're trying to create when describing or telling a story. Next one is similes. Okay, so a simile is a comparison using like or as. My key tip with this would be to try and compare it to something that everyone relates to and is original. Now that sounds quite simple, but it's actually quite difficult. But all you need to do is compare something to something that it isn't really, but has similar properties. So I feel as though I've just arrived late on the first day of school. Don't use that in a situation where you are turning up late on the first day of school, but maybe in a situation where you feel lost. That's how you would use that comparison. Okay, when he punched me, it felt like I'd just been rammed in the eye with a jousting pole. You could have said anything that was painful, and as long as it isn't something that's been used over and over again, then it'll be a little bit more original and you'll stand out to the examiners. Next is one of the most important ones. We've got sensory language. Now, this is a great way to get the audience to experience the thing that you're describing. So senses are all the things that we can sense. Now, I wouldn't say you'd include all of these senses. Don't try and force them in there, but to give a little sense of what's occurring in certain moments can really help your readers experience what you're writing and then enjoy what you're writing and feel as though they're there. So we've got things like taste, touch, see, hear, and smell. Some of these are more difficult than others, but it comes down to a matter of practice. I'd recommend going around in public and just being a bit more conscious of the things that you can smell, the things that you can taste, and If you're quite attuned, then you can kind of pick up all these kind of little subtle things, and they might not even be massive. It could even be as simple as feeling the cold floor beneath your feet, or tasting the remains of a biscuit that you ate earlier that's kind of repeating on yourself. Even if those things aren't naturally happening to you, you could always imagine that these things are happening in these situations. Okay, next we have imagery. Now, imagery is often created through a lot of different techniques, and they can be created through your use of adjectives as well. But sometimes you can do this. You can paint a picture for somebody. You can create a scenario. So if you're giving a speech, let's say I was giving a speech about trying to get people to quit smoking, I could say, imagine a person giving a talk. They're wearing all clean and fresh clothes. They speak with confidence and do a good job. Afterwards, they see you and recognize you. They come forward to shake your hand, and the smell of stale cigarette smoke hits you. The person smiles, revealing their yellowed teeth. So I'm kind of creating that image in someone's mind. You could even conjure up the image if I was doing an environmental thing. You could say, imagine a baby seal covered in oil. I wouldn't say imagine it. I wouldn't be quite so vulgar as to do that. But I would just say, I would paint that picture and I'll try and put that image in the mind of the audience to make that more persuasive. Our next one is varied vocab. So you can choose certain words depending on the severity of the situation in this point. It depends on the effect you're trying to create. For example, it's different if I were to call a person manipulative rather than just call them a bad person. Even though they both have general negative effects, for high marks we want you to be more specific with your word choice. So we look at this example. He squashed the insect. It's a perfectly fine sentence. However, you might want to be a bit more deliberate with your vocabulary in certain sentences. And you might want to say he butchered the insect. So that word butchered has been deliberately chosen. Next one is emotive language. So if you've written something and there's no emotion in the writing whatsoever, then the reader will struggle to connect with it. So we try and put a little bit of emotion. So it can either be talking about, the person's individual feelings, being really explicit, talking about, anger, pain, sadness, or anything like that. Or you could do it in a more sophisticated way, where you kind of create an idea that makes people feel an emotion, or you use adjectives or verbs that might have an emotion attached to it. So he felt the whip lash across his back, has those emotive feelings of making us feel sorry for someone. Look at this example. Simon felt a lump gather in his throat as he watched his son leave for university. So you've almost used imagery there to kind of create a little bit of emotive language, emotive feeling, just to kind of get that emotional response from the reader. Good writing is always about kind of getting some kind of response. So you either want to kind of make them feel something or be responding to their senses or think about something. So emotive language is a very, very important technique like that. So here's a small sample text to give you the opportunity just to practice finding these techniques, the same as you would in the exam when trying to talk about the effect. Okay, so Simon felt a lump gather in his throat as he watched his son leave for university. In his mind he saw him as a plump baby grabbing his finger, looking at him with eyes full of wonder. The memory brought to mind the smell of baby powder, the sound of the infant's happy gurgle. In that moment it felt as though his heart was being blown away by an electric windblower, following the tall man, his son, off to a new stage of his life. Okay, so if you want to pause that for a moment and then try and figure out where the techniques are, please do so, and then I'll move on. Okay, so the answers are here. So number one is emotive language. That's where the son is leaving to university because it's going to evoke an emotional response. Number two, so it's talking about looking at him full of eyes, full of wonder. So yeah, the image of a baby. Next, number three, we've got the sensory language, so the smell of the powder, the sound of the gurgle. And then finally, number four, we've got the simile, where we're comparing the heart being blown away like it's been blown by a wind blower. So quite a comic image there, but you can choose whichever, when you're writing this, you can choose whatever comparison. You could have chosen quite a comical one like me with the wind blower, or you could have said, you know, it felt like his heart was being put into a blender, or any kind of original response that you can come up with would be absolutely fantastic for that. Okay, finally, I'm going to include a few sheets for you guys to practice going through your GOMASSIVE techniques, and everything that I've gone through today will also be included. So please make sure you click on the test link below in the comments so that you can download those. It'll be free. And then finally, guys, if you did like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll try and upload a new video once every 2 weeks. But alternatively, if there's something you didn't like about this video, tell me in the comments and I'll see what I can do to improve it. Okay, thanks a lot, and I'll see you on the next one.